we do the color correction overall, first the levels, then the color balance. There are other settings as well, but I want you to focus on these two for now. Now what we can do is we can, besides like, for example, say you were working on somebody, the whole photo looked great, but just her face looked funky. You could select her face, feather it, and then do like individual color. You could add like another of these layers, okay? If you wanted to do the color balance like just on her face or something, if you thought that looked weird. The thing that's great about these layers is that you can turn them on or off, okay? So for example, you can see like, oh yeah, what did the levels do? Okay, I see now. Okay, this is the color balance. So it's important to have them as adjustment layers that you can always go back in and tweak, okay? Because you may change your mind. You may print this, like again, your friend may say, hey, I really want like a giant poster for my friend's band. And you may print it and you're like, oh crap, the guy's face looks totally blue. If you save it as a TIFF, you can go back in and adjust the color balance, okay? If you save it as a JPEG and you trash the original, you'll never have it. Okay, so let's talk about dodge or burn. This is adjusting the saturation using the sponge or the dodge or burn. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you is the sponge, and it's basically it basically saturates something or desaturates it, okay? So imagine you have like a big sponge and it has the ability to, a sponge obviously either like picks up water or it adds water depending on how much is in the sponge, right? If there's no water in the sponge, you can pick up water. If there's too much water in the sponge, it's gonna make things wet. So it's the same thing with this sponge here, okay? And then there's different settings, saturate or desaturate. Right now it's on desaturate, okay? So if we take the sponge and we go into our background copy, not the original, but if we go in here, what it's gonna do is it's gonna make it less saturated. If you tweak it and like put the flow up really high, it'll work. I don't know if you guys can see what it's doing, but it's really taking out the color and making it like almost like it's kind of dull, okay? Okay, so now if you have it on saturate, it's going to do the opposite, okay? So you can see immediately that it looks super fake, right? Because it's like really bright. See how it, so what you want to do is use these things sparingly and usually turn the flow down to like 50 and kind of like, go slow and don't make things look super fake unless you're trying to make it look fake for some reason. Okay, so that's the sponge. The other thing is the dodge or the burn. Has anyone ever done traditional black and white photography or color photography with an enlarger? Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, do you know what dodge and burn is? Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
What does it do?
Well, it's pretty much like describing what it adds to it or takes away from it, but it pretty much increases the contrast or increases the brightness of that photo.
So the traditional black and white photography or even color, when it's you have like a negative and there's light going through the negative and you have a white piece of paper laying down there and the image is being it's a dark room and the light goes down and then the image appears on the photographic paper. It's making the image, it's transferring it to the paper. So what dodge and burn used to mean was that somebody would take like a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard and put it over, like as the light was coming down, they would like go like this and they would actually physically block the light from going onto the paper, okay? I did this in undergrad. And it's kind of like a real art because like you can, if you know what you're doing, like you would have like your own little handmade like dodge and burn tools and stuff. So like you could have like a burn tool where there'd be like a piece of cardboard with like a hole in it and you could make like certain parts of your image brighter or darker. Or you could have like almost like a spatula and hold it over to like block parts parts of the light coming out. So that's what the dodge and burn do. Okay, so again, the dodge makes it brighter, and the burn makes it darker. Okay, so it is different than, it may look similar, but it's not the same as the sponge. Okay, again, you need to use these things sparingly, and you notice it doesn't say under the sponge it said saturate. Under dodge and burn it says exposure, because it's how much light is exposed to a specific part. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is that you notice that this is a circular object, so that's why I'm going around it like this, okay? Because it, like her legs, for example, are like verticals, so I would probably go up and down, right? It's like if you're painting, if you ever took like a painting class, you kind of want to go in the direction of, unless you're trying to do something like expressionistic or whatever. If you're painting like a building, you would normally want to do the brushstrokes up and down, okay? And it just makes sense to go with like the kind of like you're going with the grain of the object. Okay, that's dodge and burn. The other thing you can do, which is kind of a little more advanced, but it's called replace color. So you can actually take a color and replace it with another color. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to basically like pick something like her cap. So you could, go in here. You could use the pen tool actually to do this, since we just used the pen tool. So you would pick something like her cap, and then you're going to go to image, adjust, replace color. You have to use this little tool here to select all the pixels. And you see there's like this little weird kind of copy of what you have down here. Okay, so you can also do this too. I'm doing this very quickly, so it's not perfect. There's a little bit of you could do a little bit of retouching around it, but this is like how you can actually like replace a color, and it's kind of a cool little trick. The other thing is, I know we didn't talk about this much, but just if you want to like paint with a color or just grab a color, these are your foreground and background colors. When you click on them, you can get any color like this. And the default is black and white when you click up here, okay? And you switch them like this. This is going to be very similar in Illustrator. You'll use it probably more in Illustrator. But when you click on this is how you can do the color picker. The last thing I'm going to do is sharpening. Again, you can do this to individual parts of the image, but you might want to do this to the overall image. And what you do is you say filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. And again, you wouldn't want to do this until you do all this other stuff. Like if you grab a photo and you sharpen it first and then go to this, it just doesn't work the same way necessarily. So filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and then it gives you a preview, and you can if you go too crazy, then it might look fake. Okay. So that to me looks too fake. So I wouldn't probably do that much. So I would just do it like a little bit, probably. I don't know what setting. I said 70%. and you can see, I don't know if you guys can see on the screen, but it looks a little bit sharper. Now I would save it. If I was saving it for the web, it's fine to save it like this, okay? But I'm gonna throw this out there for those of you that may wanna do anything with print, is that you may want to save in CMYK mode if you're gonna have this printed as like a poster or a flyer or whatever. So you can change the color mode up here to CMYK. And the only problem with this is that it usually flattens the image, and it may look like it's more dull, but that's just what happens when you go into CMYK. Okay, so by default, Photoshop is generally, when you set up a file, it's RGB and it's for the web. But when you flatten it, or when you so now you notice it got rid of wait a minute, image mode. Okay. You can either flatten or you can do this. It doesn't really matter. But then what I would do is I would call it something else. Like I would call it this or something. Again, the reason why you do that is because if you ever had anything printed, the printer usually wants CMYK. Okay, this is industry standard. So even if you're just like uploading something for a postcard or something, they usually don't want an RGB image, because the printers that they use are not, what you see on screen is not what you're gonna get when it's printed. Okay, so generally you have to change it to CMYK. I know I went over a lot of stuff, but what I would like you to do is